I am the Universal User's Manual. I contain the secrets of the universe. What is the meaning of life?
Who would win in a fight? One gorilla.
Pixar has been in a weird spot in the last 3 years in the public eye, where we go back and forth with thinking Pixar is dead to then thinking Pixar has finally gotten their mojo back. And after Inside Out 2 absolutely blew the roof off quality and success-wise, I was expecting the average perception to change on the studio again, finally get our deep sigh of relief after the COVID straight-to-streaming years that everybody switched up in, and then the first Pixar series, Win or Lose, came out sometime after and got absolutely dunked on during the promo run. I may or may not have been involved in that. And then Pixar thought that was the smart time to announce the completely unnecessary Coco 2 and Toy Story 5's plotline focusing on electronics. So yet again, we have hit the block where two different paths are in Pixar's future, and it's hard to be excited for that future when there's so many strange, indecisive choices happening in the midst of smart choices. That's not to say I haven't loved the last Pixar films. I've made that apparent in my other videos. Luca is still maybe in my top 20 favorite animated films of all time. I think it has one of the best soundtracks of recent Pixar films, and nobody acknowledges it. Meet Luca is life-changing. Turning Red isn't in my top 20, but there are scenes in that film that should be appreciated till the end of time. I even ended up watching Win or Lose the day it started coming out, and it was just as wholesome and cozy as I had expected. Lots of themes that I didn't think were going to be explored were done really well and maturely, but there are definitely small issues I saw in the series and the release of it that do have to go with my theory as to why Pixar isn't on the top of animation fans' minds anymore. And that issue is the feeling for me that Pixar is becoming a studio that focuses a lot less on taking a shot in the dark and seeing what happens, and instead meticulously molding projects to be easy to consume and relate to media. And in doing so, it tends to make every new Pixar film become basically one and the same. There hasn't really been a Pixar film to me that has separated itself stylistically or theme-wise from the last few Pixar movies. And so when they announce a new one, me and a lot of people unfortunately are ready to get almost the same characters we've already gotten 5 times before. I'm totally fine with Pixar going for emotionally driven outcast characters. I relate to outsider stories myself, and it allows Pixar to become more specific as they can branch off from the what-if stories they have become codependent on. But when these outcast movies start to feel like a gimmick just as much as the what-if stories, that's when it becomes a problem. I feel the same way with so much media at the moment. The recent Stranger Things season is a good comparison. It's this feeling that a studio is no longer going in blind, not knowing something's gonna make an impact, just leading with creativity, but instead perfectly molding characters and plot points in a blender, trying so hard to replicate what you previously liked or what they think you'll like, and in doing so, half of the project feels forced and one-dimensional. There's no reason Pixar needs to promote Win or Lose by having the mom twerk in her daughter's face. That's not me being a Karen saying it's weird or creepy like other people have said, cause it's not creepy. To me, the actual problem is that it reeks of desperation, and this marketing tactic of Pixar, most likely Disney, promoting all of their projects as solely silly, quirky media is dishonest to the actual material and keeping a huge audience away who will see these promotional clips and not know how deep of a show Win or Lose is or how deep Elio gets. And sure, maybe Pixar flopping has to do with audiences not seeing original animated films or shows, but I think that's greatly underestimating public interest. So many original animated films have done well because their promotional material was straight up in showing that they were going to be heartfelt experiences that you had to witness, whereas Elio's trailers forfeit showcasing its deeper emotional side in sake of promoting a goofy family film that it thinks you want. We do not care about Claude's Riz. If I wanted to see a small dirt character, I would watch Pokemon. Show us what the film is actually gonna be about. There are ways to make promo material that doesn't spoil but still shows it's a beautiful personal film. How did Pixar lose that? Why is Elio doing TikToks with text on the screen that says Elio Core? The marketing team is making these characters seem performative instead of the director's life work. I hope moving forward the studio takes the effort to no longer sabotage originals by marketing them as digestible slop. And this is also not to say Elio isn't still a pretty great film. I stick on my my word that because of my previously stated issues, I wasn't too shocked with a lot of its messages as much as I wanted to be, but as a story, I thought it was good. Not amazing, but does the job, and once you get past the predictable character traits, you get one of Pixar's more interesting plot lines in a while. Lots of twists and turns that caught me off guard. Unfortunately, my liking towards this film is heavily based on its redeemable second and third half. Most of my problems are apparent in the first 30 minutes, so I'm gonna be negative in a lot of this next segment, just so I can get my evilness out of the way. Please forgive me. Elio follows this kid named obviously Elio, who's struggling with the death of his parents and is finding an escape through his love of aliens and the extraterrestrial world. But this interest becomes an obsession that is causing problems in his aunt's life, who is now raising him. And the final straw for her is him trying to bite another kid at the beach who is messing with the ham radio he's using to make contact. Yes, it's deserved. Don't touch his ham radio, you little twerp. You should have known that. You don't even deserve to be bit. You deserve death. I've bitten people for doing far less.
Like a true survivor, I'm feeling like a little kid.
It's Shuri! That's my son!
Because of this, Aunt Olga ends up sending him to a summer camp, and even though he dreads going, it turns out that this was exactly the place he needed to be to get what he's always wanted, being kidnapped by aliens and living among them. I want to stop right here and say it's a very weird plot choice that Elio's aunt is having a hard time with his space obsession, considering the fact she's in the Air Force and it's quickly revealed she gave up a future of being an astronaut to raise Elio. I feel like she would easily understand Elio's space dreams and motivations and be able to relate with him on that. I don't personally feel like you can get the disconnect across or show that Elio doesn't fit in, when a lot of the opening of this film, he's in the exact environments he wants to be in, and again, is now being raised by a relative who knows the most about astronomy. Maybe I'm totally misunderstanding here, but if you really want to push the outsiderness of Elio, you would think we'd see him at school struggling to make friends. You can't paint this picture that Elio feels misunderstood when we barely get to see him feel different, or more so why he thinks he doesn't belong. The only setting we get where it actually focuses on Elio not getting along with peers is at summer camp, and of course the biting scene, and that's a very short segment of the film. Turning Red accomplished the not belonging concept so much better because you actually felt the pressure May was going through as she had to actively hide who she is and who she was becoming. Her mom judged the boy band she was really into and the friends she hung out with, so there was a lot of satisfaction to the audience when her mom finally came to terms with the fact her daughter isn't exactly who she wants her to be, and she can support her despite that. Elio and Olga's dynamic doesn't feel that way to me, even though the movie tries to get at that same theme. His room is decked out in space decoration. He clearly has freedom to explore who he is and explore his interests. I get it that the movie is more so showing that Elio's aunt is having a hard time with his over-the-top and impulsive behavior and not so much his interests, and that's what's making Elio feel unaccepted. But the messages of that are not built upon, so it makes it really hard to find any relatability in his character, because again, we haven't actually seen him struggle to find connection. This aspect of the movie feels like it's telling you and not showing you. This leads me to the elephant in the room, which is the clear story switch from the trailers and what I think is a total script rewrite. The first trailer goes for the whole abduction plotline being a lot less of a want for Elio, whereas the new trailers and the final film ended up following Elio pushing for it to happen. Although this plot switch allows Elio's personality to shine through more, it does forfeit the believability, as it's kind of hard to take Elio's nonchalance about flying up into a spaceship and literally seeing spiritual beings beyond his comprehension seriously. If you look at concept art, the storyboard team was shooting for a world almost designed to be Elio's happy place, and yes, that's super sweet and all. This art looks absolutely lickable and beautiful, but designing a perfect world for your main character takes away a lot of opportunity for it to feel like a mystery to him in the audience. You're skipping out on so many intense reactions you can show with a fish out of water concept by doing that. I was very disappointed at the lack of mystery and wonder in the first half when Elio finally gets into space. That's what I was looking forward to the most when I first saw the sneak peek art in the original trailer. To add on to that, the aliens in this universe have abilities that just seem way too easily written. For example, there's this floating centipede looking character that can read Elio's mind. There's this spiritual being that has all the answers to life's greatest questions, and then the aliens can understand English in like 5 seconds. They have an internal translator. All of this is cool to watch on paper, but gives off the sense that this is a perfect, refined version of an alien planet. Nothing is pushing the boundaries or makes me go, oh wow, I didn't even think about that as an alien. No, this is all the type of aliens we would want to exist in a perfect world. Pixar used to be the master of clever characters and pun characters you would think they would lock in when playing in the sandbox of Aliens? Where are the lackluster aliens? Where are the scary aliens? Where are the weird aliens? Where is Paul? If I was working on Elio, I would make the creative choice to at least make some of the aliens as imperfect and clumsy as possible to show Elio that even hyper-galactic beings don't do everything right and make mistakes and struggle to make connections. If you're trying to show the development of Elio finding out he can still find relatability and importance in places he feels out of place, the last thing you would do to display that is put him in a well-rounded realm of these super advanced aliens that have literally no other problems in their lives outside of a FOMO villain. This is so random, but Home 2015 is actually a perfect example of how to accomplish what this movie tries to do, and I'm not being ironic. One of my favorite scenes in that movie is when O tells Kyle he can't be a leader because he sparks too many problems, and Kyle responds, "You're not the only boob that makes mistakes. I made a mistake by not being your friend."
No, I am not a leader, Boov. I makes far too many mistakes.
You are not the only Boov who makes mistakes. For examples, my mistake is not being your friend.
That 2-minute scene alone captured the messages of acceptance so seamlessly. I guess you could say Glorden is supposed to be the imperfect alien for Elio to witness and relate to, an alien that doesn't fit the rest of them, and that's why Elio connects with him so quickly. But if so, why do we know nothing about him? He just explains that his dad doesn't accept him, that he's constantly messing up things, and that's about it. The lack of showcasing or backstory given to any of these characters in this world causes so much of a disconnect for me. The aliens eventually feel like bystanders after their initial debut. We barely get to know the ants' personal life or motives. The way Lord Grygon, Glorden's dad, the villain, comes into the story is super fast, and for most of the film, he's kinda just there. His terrifying nature is spread out so lightly and slowly throughout the runtime that you eventually forget what he's even trying to accomplish, which is taking over the communiverse. I love Pixar so much, so saying all of this hurts my soul, but I sat through the first 35 minutes of this movie hoping to know more about all of these characters, and it didn't come. Funny enough though, this is all leading to the part of this video where I totally contradict myself to tell you guys that this film does end up actually finding something to focus on, and that's when I got more confident and the movie became more than just okay to me. The further we get into the film, the directionless nature fades as the main plotline starts to follow Elio using Glorden as a bargaining chip to convince Lord Grygon to let the communiverse be and to not overtake it. But Elio realizes through his newfound connection with Glorden that Glorden doesn't want to be part of his dad's warlord community, also known as the Hylurgians, and this makes Elio totally rethink his plan of giving up Glorden in exchange for peace. He instead comes up with the plan of making a clone of Glorden to trick Grygon. A main character trying to successfully bait the villain is not something I've seen from Pixar. The last time I felt this much anxiety watching a Pixar movie was maybe Coco. I took a sigh of relief in the theater when this plot started building, as it actually felt like Elio was reaching towards something specific, a main goal. I really appreciate when stories feel like they have a time limit. That impending doom feeling makes me feel so much more immersed. The recent lineup of Pixar stories don't really have problems that feel urgent, which is totally fine, but this was a nice change of pace. And through the storyline of Elio helping Glorden, we get to learn more about Elio's motivations, his fears, and also Grygon's motivations and his personality, as the story starts to focus less on him as a villain and more on him as a father. I thought that was an interesting route to go. That's not to totally put aside my disappointment with the lack of Grygon backstory, but this almost ended up being better as it explored the identity of Grygon in a continuous fashion built on his son's views of him and less on his villainy warlord past. I started to care less about seeing him as a villain and more seeing his dynamic with his son unfold, so I give points to Pixar for that. Humanizing his characters so that I no longer really cared if he was set up as a proper villain. I've seen a lot of people complain about the lack of comedy in Elio, and I definitely agree they should have put more humor into this story, especially with a world that has so much comedy potential. The only real scenes I got any laughter out of was Elio waiting to be abducted and some of the jokes Glorden had. But overall, I was so distracted by the tenseness of everything unfolding, Elio getting out of jail, trying not to be burned alive in the tunnels, learning about Glorden's father issues, that I didn't care that much, and it probably would have muddied the emotional beats. Speaking of Glorden and Elio's friendship is by far the best part of this movie, and moving forward might be the only reason I'll ever rewatch. That first scene where they meet each other and find similarities is so adorable and wholesome. These kids were putting their whole soul into the voice acting. You really feel like you're watching a friendship grow despite Glorden and Elio being totally different beings.
And how Grygon's gonna blow everyone up unless I can find a bargaining chip. Something he values? But what does he even value? Well, Dad values blood, glory, the misery of his enemies. Ooh, there's this one time.
Hold up. Qui-Gon's your dad?
I thought you knew. I look just like him. Check it out.
Glorden ends up serving as an eye-opening figure for Elio, as later in the movie, Glorden unknowingly gives Elio a glimpse of unconditional love and acceptance. The animation and lighting in Elio is obviously gorgeous. It does its duty of making you really feel like you're in space. The Carl Sagan monologue that plays in some of the space montages added so much to the atmosphere I didn't expect. I felt like I was watching an animated Arrival.
We can send spacecraft to nearby planets. We can use large radio telescopes to see if there is any message being sent to us lately. And it touches to the deepest of human concerns. Are we alone?
There's also some scenes that are on the verge of horror that I absolutely adore. I said the same thing about some of the scenes in Puss in Boots 2 and got roasted on Reddit for it. But when I say horror, I mean in a Gravity Falls / Nightmare Before Christmas way. Tame horror. Elio has body horror, for God's sake. It clearly is trying to take advantage of the creepy nature of space and aliens, while still remaining a classic family film. It always feels like with animated movies, it's either one or the other, so the mix of light, colorful visuals with some scenes straight out of Goosebumps gets my full applause. My favorite scene in this movie that gave me chills is earlier in the film when the kids fighting Elio at camp freeze when the abduction happens. It just looked insane, and I could feel the silence in the theater. I want Pixar to keep pushing for scenes like this when it can be added, and more than anything, this scene makes me really wish even more we had gotten the sci-fi horror version of Elio that was in the original teaser. A version of Elio where it takes full advantage of cliche alien horror movies to almost a mockbuster extent would have been sick. There's a subplot where an Elio clone is sent back to Earth to keep suspicion away from Olga, which is super clever, and another part of this movie that is well sculpted. They use his clone as a plot device that shows Elio's life if he was a perfect version of himself, and at first you think his aunt suspects nothing and is loving this sudden change, but the twist is that she does know it's not Elio, and after doing her own research, she figures out the truth and wants to find the real one. This scene caught me off guard. The way he grabs her hand is so funny. Not only did this subplot give Olga something to finally do, but added on to Elio finding out that his aunt does really care and just wants him to be himself, even if it's hard for her to handle sometimes. That's where this movie heads towards regarding the final message, and thankfully it actually knows how to portray it at this point in the movie. The last act is so strong, and existing in a vacuum cut apart from the problems this movie has, it's near perfection. Elio gets Glorden's clone to Qui-Gon, who at first doesn't think anything of it until he quickly sniffs out that it's not his child and disintegrates him right in front of Elio's eyes. These expressions of instant shock are hilarious.
It was a clone!
Qui-Gon uses the mind-reading alien, who I forgot the name of, to find out where Glorden is actually at, and that's when the aliens also find out that Elio isn't actually the leader of Earth like he says he is. Elio's so desperate to prove himself worthy of staying despite lying to them in the midst of chaos where he has absolutely no choice but to leave is heartbreaking. The music as he falls back to Earth had me sitting in my chair like this. One thing Pixar knows how to do lately is show a character being totally broken down and at rock bottom. Elio accomplishes this to a T. You feel so bad as he looks back up at the stars with a sense of hopelessness and feeling like he has failed. After this, Elio finds Aunt Olga on the beach trying to make contact to aliens and him herself, and him seeing how lost she feels opens his eyes, and it's an emotional segment where he realizes his importance to his aunt after thinking she wouldn't miss him, as he's had the mindset that he's disrupted her life and she shows him otherwise. Tears did start to flow out of my face, but I'm not that hard to make cry. I was swelling up the second Olga realized it was the real Elio after taking off his eye patch. This segment is stopped abruptly as Elio's clone comes back to tell them something's happening at the base, which is Glorden crash landing in the pod he was being kept hidden in, and he's struggling to survive in the Earth's cold temperature. The comedy that comes during this segment with Elio's clone just coming along for the ride, morbidly okay with his time being up on Earth, this partners in crime bit with Olga and Elio, and of course the pressure of needing to get Glorden back to space is a perfect combination of so many strong aspects. And if only this blend was carried throughout the entire runtime, this maybe would have been one of my favorites. I can never deny how good Pixar is at bringing all of their concepts together. All the characters that we didn't get much of all have a purpose to the story story in this finale. The boys that got into the fight with Elio come back to help him and his aunt dodge flying debris as they're making their way back to the Communiverse. Melmac, the character no one paid attention to in the beginning, marked off as a crazy conspiracy theorist, is revealed to be the leader of a ham radio group, and even he starts to help. Yes, this scene did last a little too long, but it looks stunning, so it's ignorable. It does a great job at capturing the "we are not alone" sentiment, as people all over Earth were connecting to the radio to help as well.
Velocity 7.2.
Pull back! Hard!
Thank you! Thank you!
Masters of Ham at your service.
This is Julia from Italia.
This is awesome!
The bait and switch that comes when Elio returns Gordon to Grigon is so unexpected. Grigon swings his hands back and Olga thinks Elio is chopped liver, but actually Grigon is taking off his suit to reveal he is just a small little worm like Gordon. I'm trying so hard not to bring up home again in this video, but this is kind of a parallel. I am a sucker for a dad realizing their sons are not exactly like them, and that's okay plotline. Grigon coddling Gordon will stand the test of time in my brain.
I may not always understand you, but I still love you.
Elio says goodbye to his alien pals who have now accepted him as family and have even given him the opportunity to stay in space with them, but he now knows there is a connection out there he can make and wants to try again on Earth. Round of applause from me. The only issue I had with the last 30 minutes is the slow motion scenes they keep throwing in randomly. It's so clear these slow motion scenes were quickly edited to be slow-mo and are not actually animated to be, because it looks super choppy. I thought the theater screen was lagging, but no, the slow motion scenes actually just look like this. I'm gonna give Elio an easy 6.5 out of 10. It's a film that does the job in giving me the emotion that it so badly aims for, but has a rough time getting there. The main issue overall with Elio that keeps it from being as good as it could be is the lack of confidence you can feel it has. There's all these good ideas it could inch towards, but none of them are allowed to fully breathe, at least until the wrap up where they locked in. As much as I appreciate the focus on a very specific goal in this movie and the tension that comes with it, there are so many animated movies coming out that can do that and also healthily explore and expand the other aspects such as comedy and background characters to a nice mix throughout their entirety that it makes Elio kind of in the same boat as Elemental. Not bad at all, but not pushing itself to be unexpected or at least truly take advantage of its concept. More than anything, I pray to God Pixar and Disney doesn't take this movie underperforming at the box office as a sign to greenlit 100 more sequels, because it's not the originals that's keeping Pixar down, it's the lack of care towards, one, making their films look enticing to go see, especially when they're releasing these films at the same time as huge blockbusters, and two, a lack of allowing their originals to stray away from the overused format they're getting into. I'm holding on to hope we get in an era where Pixar thinks outside the box again and is fully confident in their movies. Luckily, they quickly put out a trailer for their next film, Hoppers, not too long ago, which seems to be aiming towards a new aesthetic, almost an uncomfortable concept that could be really great if they stick with it, so we'll see. Thanks guys for watching. I apologize this review came out so late. I got carried away throughout the summer, so hopefully I'm back on a frequent schedule. My next two videos are gonna be insane, guys.